Department of Homeland Security. Okay, it's out of business for the time being because Democrats won't fund it because they want all kinds of modifications to ICE. And so they're down. And here's the kicker. They have to stop all their investigations. There are 8 active investigations being done by the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security against ICE. Because let's face it, let's be honest. All the ICE agents aren't perfect. And there has been some abuse and have been investigated. Well, that stops. Okay? So I expect this thing will be, Congress is on a recess now. When they come back, they'll work it out, I think. Joining us from Montclair, New Jersey is a former Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson. 4 years under Barack Obama. We're very pleased to have the Secretary with us. You know, you in Obama's second term deported more people, all right, than Donald Trump did in his first term. And so when I see that stat, and the Democrat Party didn't give you a hard time on that, did they?
There were certainly activists on the, first of all, Mr. O'Reilly, thank you for having me on your show. There were certainly activists on the left that gave us a very hard time about deportations. President Obama was labeled the deporter in chief in 2013, 2014, and I knew that that aggravated him because it was in the midst of an effort to try to achieve comprehensive immigration reform. But yes, the deportation numbers were high. It's a product of a bunch of different things, crossings, interior enforcement, and the crossings into the United States were fairly low during his second term. My second full year in office, border crossings, illegal border crossings were, I think, the second lowest number since 1972. And that too is a product of a lot of different things, but enforcement certainly contributed to that.
Yeah, I wasn't railing about lax enforcement under the Obama administration, but the party, yes, you're right, radicals will always do that. Open border people, always. But the party, Schumer, all these guys, they supported you and Barack Obama in trying to regulate who was coming into the country, by and large. Is that correct?
That is correct. I would agree with that statement.
Right. So what's changed? What's changed now that you have a flood because of President Biden? Why isn't Chuck Schumer saying, no, we got to get this under control?
So I don't quite know the answer to that. What I do know, the hard lessons I learned managing this problem is you probably have found the right balance when both sides are screaming at you, or you don't hear anything at all about this issue. You've got people on the right who say there are too many illegal crossings. I believe there's a racist component to that, but
really?
Securing
you really
our border.
Think so? You think that
yes,
if Belgians were coming over to the tune of 15 million, that the Republicans wouldn't scream?
I believe that there is a racist element. I also believe that securing our border is a legitimate government objective. I believe Americans are entitled, for the most powerful nation on earth, to know who is entering our country. So that is a legitimate government objective that I and President Obama certainly work toward. I also believe that there is a very large category of people in this country who entered this country illegally who have become de facto Americans. You know who they are.
Sure.
They've committed no crimes. They want to be accountable. They want to get on the books. They have kids who are U.S. citizens. And we got to deal with that population.
And President Obama, your boss, did want to do that with the Dreamer Act, and he got nowhere because his party and the Republican Party didn't cooperate with him. But I'm more interested in this. So you're probably one of the 5 guys in the country who know this subject best. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching an evolution of a party, the Democrats, from yes, we have to enforce immigration law, to no, we don't want to enforce it, because they are using that issue to hammer the Trump administration. Now, here's the key question. What is the Trump administration doing differently than what you did?
Well, I'm going to come back to something. I may be one of the 5 people who understand how to manage this problem, but you're much more astute politically than I am. The politics of immigration have overwhelmed any desire for a smart policy. And the evidence of that is what is happening now. And the evidence of that is what happened 2 years ago after Senator Lankford and Senator Murphy negotiated a pretty good bipartisan bill that was pretty strong on border security. But the politicians didn't want to fix the problem. They'd rather have the problem as something to complain about.
Okay, so you believe that the political aspect overwhelms the fairness aspect. But this is important.
On both sides.
This is important, Mr. Secretary. You guys deported 1.5 million people under your term, 4 years. And that doesn't count the first term, okay? That's a lot of folks. The Trump administration so far, 1 year, about 700,000, all right? So you guys and the Trump administration were simpatico in saying we have to round these people up, see who they are, okay, and then decide whether they should stay or go. Not everybody the Trump administration rounds up gets deported, not everyone. So what is the difference between the agents, the ICE agents, under you and under Trump?
Well, there are elements of deportations. You know, is it expedited deportation of people who just crossed the border, or are you trying to deport people in the interior of the country who've been there for a very long time? And
well, you got to have a warrant. You got to have a reason, and that's what's unreported. The press won't report that if you don't show up for an asylum hearing, for example, you're right on the deportation list. You may not be a violent criminal. You may not have, but if you don't show up, you're out.
Right. So here's what I believe is the big difference, Bill. This administration started off, we're going to go after the worst of the worst. I think that's totally legitimate. In fact, that was my objective while I was in office. Go after the worst of the worst. But you don't try to achieve a quota for the sake of achieving a quota. You got to be smart about this. What is inevitably going to happen, which has happened in Minneapolis and other places, is the way ICE goes about its business becomes so controversial that the mayors, the city councils, the governors don't want to work with you anymore, which is essential if you're going to get at the worst of the worst for the benefit of public safety.
Okay, but you had that too, though. You had sanctuary. California was a sanctuary state when you were in office. They didn't cooperate with you.
And we had a program called Secure Communities, which I totally changed, rebranded to call the Priority Enforcement Program, so that I could get people like Bill de Blasio and Michael Nutter in Philadelphia to start working with us again. I'd encounter people in city councils in Chicago who I'd say, why don't you give us the guy who's undocumented, who just finished a lengthy prison sentence because he committed a felony? And the answer I got was, why should I do that? He's already served his time. He's been punished. Come on, he's undocumented. Right. So it was that kind of attitude that we would often encounter. And my response would always be, work with me now before you are faced with a crisis. You've got a murder committed by an undocumented person who was released from jail. Wouldn't you rather work with me now on this? So we were making great strides to do that. And what I used to say to leaders of ICE, Tom Homan included, who worked for me, use your common sense when you're on the streets conducting interior enforcement. One controversial incident could derail your entire mandate, your entire ability to work within a community to get stuff done and turbocharge the sanctuary
Okay.
cities community.
Well, that's certainly logical. Now, do you believe Holman's a good man?
Holman was one of my key advisors. The answer is yes. He's very pro law enforcement. He's pro enforcement. I knew the label on that bottle of wine I was getting, but he's fundamentally a law enforcement officer. He's not an ideologue.
Do you believe that ICE agents in general are trained enough? Are they professional people?
In general, what I see sitting here, as an armchair quarterback these days, watching the videos, the images, I see a force that is not adequately trained in the tactics of de-escalation, which is common all throughout
Legitimate
New York City
criticism.
police.
Right. I've made that criticism. Finally, were you surprised when President Biden took office and the floodgates opened? Open border, 15 million. Anybody wants asylum, you don't have to go to a port of entry anymore. You can just wander right across, cartels helping you, say, I want asylum. They'll give you a bus ticket. You go anywhere you want. Were you surprised at that kind of a policy?
Yes, I was.
Why do you think he did it? Why do you think he did it?
Well,
Biden?
I can tell you, I can explain the reaction better than the rationale. Illegal immigration, Bill, is a very information sensitive phenomenon. It reacts sharply, upward or downward, to perceived changes in our enforcement policy on the southern border. When Biden came into office, he was perceived as being soft, and you saw the results. When Trump came into office, the numbers plummet. But, and here's the key corollary, so long as the push factors persist, the numbers are always going to revert back to their longer term trend lines. So when Trump took office in 2017, the numbers dropped. But by 2019, because the push factors persist, the numbers started to escalate again to the point where in 2019, he had something like 1 million crossings.
Well, that's because of the Mexican situation. No, they didn't stop the caravans, and they were working with the drug cartels. The corruption in Mexico was off the board. And
well,
the reason
that's a key component.
Of
yes.
course.
And
the reason that go ahead.
2014, one of the reasons we got the numbers under control is because President Peña Nieto agreed to do more enforcement on his southern border with Central America, which is only 300 miles.
Right. All right, Mr. Secretary, it's very nice of you to come on, and I hope you come back, and we really appreciate it.
Invite me back.